Hey guys, going to talk about an interesting one tonight. I'm going to talk about one of my philosophies I have when it comes to training. And now, um, as you may well know, four years ago I started in the sport of arm wrestling. I was pretty skinny. I was only about 70 kilos at the time. I enjoyed arm wrestling as a kid. I grew up enjoying it. I grew up thinking I was pretty decent. I could beat most of my mates at school. I could beat most people when I joined the army as well. But I had no idea that it was a legitimate sport, that there was any sort of official capacity to it, and I certainly knew nothing. Now, how I got into the sport was through a good friend of mine, Mason Haydar. Mason was actually the representative who delivered my wholesale supplements to my retail supplement store that I then owned. And one day he challenged me to an arm wrestle. And look, this guy, he's a former professional kickboxer and taekwondo martial artist, and so he absolutely grilled me. We grouped up over just the bench top in my supplement store, and he absolutely hammered me. And straight away, I said to him, I remember saying to him, "Hey mate, Mason, I'm going to beat you next month when you come and deliver these supplements. I'm going to beat you next month. I'm never going to lose to you again after that." So, of course, Mason laughed because he really did hammer me. He was obviously feeling pretty confident that he was going to be able to back it up next month. But lo and behold, the month went by. I jumped straight into, as I do, an incredibly competitive person, regardless of how weak I was at the time relative to Mason. I jumped online, started researching and looking for arm wrestling technique. In the process of it, I discovered that arm wrestling was a legitimate sport. I found the Australian Arm Wrestling Federation. I saw that there was a World Arm Wrestling Federation. I saw that there were leagues out there, like the Ultimate Arm Wrestling League was on at the time. WAL wasn't in existence yet, but there was heaps. It was clear to me that there was heaps going on in the world of arm wrestling that I had no idea about, and that truly did excite me. So instantly, I decided I wanted to be a champion in the sport of arm wrestling. To me, this was like a second opportunity. As a kid, I tried in professional sports. In the pursuit of tennis, I got close. As a junior, I ranked pretty highly. I think I got into, I won national tournaments. I got into the top 10 as a junior at one point in time, but I was never able to get the confidence to actually go on and make a career of it. I was intimidated by that and ended up just going and joining the military. So when I was 27 years old, and I discovered this arm wrestling, to me this was like this second opportunity at making it in a sport. It was this second opportunity of actually making it in a professional sport and pursuing that childhood dream of being a professional athlete. So even if it wasn't in a high paying sport, I didn't care. Arm wrestling, it's awesome. Right then and there, that day that I lost that arm wrestle to my mate, and I discovered all this stuff via Google, the Australian Arm Wrestling Federation, World Arm Wrestling Federation, I decided then and there, I'm going to be a professional arm wrestler. So from that day, I declared, and I think I even started a random YouTube channel. It was terrible at the time, but anyway, and I declared I'm going to go from nobody to champ. Now, my first goal was to become national champion, which is obviously a big goal given that I'd never been in the sport. Now, look, fast forward to where I am now. 4 years later, I've won multiple national titles, both left and right arm. Won Asia Pacific titles, and we're on to bigger and better things. But look, that first initial journey, it was a really important journey for me, going from an absolute beginner in the sport to aiming for the Australian national champion. And so how I did that was, look, I made an assumption, and this is what I wanted to talk about tonight, my philosophy on how I go about trying to get strong. Now, a lot of my journey has been shaped by, of course, Devon Larratt, who's shaped so many of our journeys in terms of how we train, what we look for, what we identify as critical things that we need to improve. And Devon Larratt said one thing that, look, I want to just put out there straight away as a sort of overarching philosophy, is that it is an incredibly windy path to the top. I know that you're going to see some athletes that appear to have made it to the top just through raw power. They're just simply, they win by being stronger than their opponents. Then you're going to look at people who have come from a background where there was really no strength at all, and they've used a lot of technique, a lot of counters, a lot of thought goes into the way that they arm wrestle, and they're less about strength and more about throwing their opponents off balance. Okay, so to me, look, I want to acknowledge straight away that there are many ways to get to the top of arm wrestling, be it the windy path of technique or the raw path of strength. I think combinations of those is obviously what it takes to get there. But I have my own philosophy, as do others. I know people like Chris Gobby loves to tell me that I just need to get stronger. I do agree with you, Chris. I am getting stronger every day. But I like to take it to another angle as well. So when I started in that sport, when I was saying to myself I want to become a national champion, okay, I made an assumption straight away. I said to myself, let's assume that the people who are the best on the planet are not there, ranked at the top, because they're the strongest. Let's assume that they are better arm wrestlers than their opponents. And so what I did, I didn't even know who the world champions were initially. I started looking, I thought Denis Saplenkov was the best arm wrestler on the planet through my initial searches. Then I discovered John Brzezinski and was like, oh, hang on a second. Obviously people like Devin Larratt, then all of the Eastern European arm wrestlers that are spectacular as well, Engin Terzi. I spent a lot of time watching Evgeny Prudnik. All those guys in the early days were a lot of the people that I did watch very, very closely and study. So as I was saying, what I did is I made the assumption that those guys had got to the top, not through raw strength and being simply stronger than their opponents, but by being a better arm wrestler, being more aware and using leverage. Okay, so I straight away dedicated to myself to becoming what I call a student of arm wrestling biomechanics. I focus on it, I watch it, I observe it, I assume that everyone's the same strength level, and I assume that the person who's going to win is doing it because they're taking away leverage on their opponent. As I've heard Devin Larratt explain quite a number of times, arm wrestling is not a strength sport. A strength sport would be a consistent object that everybody has when they're attempting to move it. So a deadlift, whatever, we know the object, we know it's going to be the same conditions every time. Arm wrestling, it's a combat sport. Every single movement that I do affects my opponent's access to their power and vice versa. So you need to be in my belief, for you to become the greatest arm wrestler in the shortest period of time, you really need to master the biomechanics of arm wrestling and master the ability to apply a counter to your opponent's position without having to think about it. Now, I remember going back to my first ever arm wrestling tournament. I had one move. I had a big posting top roll. I didn't even know really anything about the sport. I'd been training for 3 months and I just was loving it so much that I went and entered a state tournament down in Victoria. And I had one move only. I didn't know what a hook was. I didn't have any idea of inside pressure at all. I didn't even have I wasn't even holding on when I was top rolling. I was just simply doing this tremendously ugly posting top roll. So when I initially get into the sport, and the newer you are in the sport, the more you have to consciously think about what you're doing. Obviously, the guys who've been in the sport for a long time, John Brzezinski, I remember hearing him, I don't know if I heard it, I read it, whatever it was, I heard it somewhere, I think it was in a blog that I read about John, was when somebody asked John, what do you consider your best strength in the sport? I think John replied that he could grip anyone on the planet without having met them before and feel exactly what they wanted to do in the arm wrestle and know exactly how to counter them without conscious thought. His hand is just a living, breathing organism that grips an opponent, understands exactly what they want to do, and instantly puts them in a position where it's going to be hard for them to achieve what they want. So he's one step ahead, and that's like when we look at the Eastern cultures, the different martial arts that are out there, we see it all the time. The young athlete who's raring to go is probably stronger than the old wise master, but the old wise master is 3 steps ahead when it comes to the movements. And although the young, tenacious guy thinks he's winning and thinks he's stronger, faster than the older, wiser athlete, the older, wiser athlete just leads him into traps, leads him into dead spaces, and is 3 steps ahead, already ready with the counter when that person moves into a certain position. So arm wrestling is exactly the same. If you think that you can just be stronger, you'll get a fair way through the sport. I think you can even go close to all the way to the top. People like Richard Lupke's absolutely strength-based athlete, far less technical than other counterparts like Devin Larratt, John Brzezinski, but clearly has made an outstanding result for themselves in the sport of arm wrestling in the process. So don't get me wrong, you can do it through strength, but I believe to be the best in the shortest period of time, you have to first of all master the awareness. So how did I master the awareness? In my first 12 months in the sport, I couldn't get as much table time as I wanted, but I had my elbow on a table every day. I was arm wrestling a band. I was watching videos, and here's where one of my favorite things that I do came into play. because I didn't have anybody to arm wrestle with, what I started to do is I started to, in my mind's eye, imagine that I was John Brzenk, imagine that I was Devin Lara, imagine that I was Evgeny Prudnik. Now, what I mean by doing that, and the value in doing that, is look, everybody arm wrestles differently. Everybody feels different on the table. Everybody looks different on the table. The key to learning all these different positions is, in my opinion anyway, and how I do it best, is to almost close my eyes and imagine that I'm John Brzenk. I even get down to the facial expressions. If I'm Devin Lara, I'm sitting there taking breaths as I'm regripping, hooking like John Brzenk. I've got my face on like John Brzenk, whatever it might be. Okay, mimicking those people's positions that I've seen on YouTube videos was a really important way to teach my body the physiology and the biomechanics, and allow me to understand what they're doing. So on the training table, I do exactly the same thing. I pretend that I'm all these different people that have all these different styles, and I experiment with Barboza's style. I want to be Ron Barth tonight. I'm going to be Todd Zilla tonight. I'm going to be Nicholas Nanestad tomorrow. I'm going to be... I try with everyone. Okay, I want to feel what it's like to arm wrestle like all these other people. Okay, and that maps out, for me, different methods, different counters all the time. Now, don't get me wrong. As I've said, there are a million ways to the top. I don't doubt that. Work ethic obviously is something that is undeniable. You're not going to make it without work ethic. Physically, you must be tremendously strong to make it to the elite level of this sport. No one is going to deny that. For me, you do see people at the top that have a all-out move. Taras Ivakin, massive top roller. Krasimir Kostadinov, huge hooker. Clearly, those guys are specialists in their move, and they've made it to the elite level of the sport. It's just not my philosophy. My philosophy is, if somebody asks me, what's your technique? I want to say, look, I just like to counter. My technique is countering what people are trying to do to me. So for me, it's all about denying somebody the access to their power. When I grip someone, I want to, look, if I've had the chance to do my research against them, I'm going to know what they are generally going to want to do. And for me, it's all about then developing a game that is going to counter that. If I don't know the person, it's about gripping them, feeling the pressures that they're loading with, and being able to counter that. Now, of course, this is where we get into deep layering of technique and deep layering of tactics. People are going to be decoying with their pressures, setting up with an outside pressure to go in, setting in with an inside threat to go out, all sorts of things. Okay, elbow back to jump forward, elbow forward to drag back, lots of different movements off the start. Okay, but the more you have spent time in the sport and the more that you understand how people are thinking, the more you can be ahead of that, as John Brzenk is. He's incredibly aware of what his opponent's wanting to do, and that in itself allows him to exploit it. So, look, I already have, having spent 4 years in the sport, I've got some good wins under my belt. I've got some losses under my belt. I've never been afraid of losses. I've always been taking every opportunity I can possibly get to be on the table against somebody that I can't yet beat. To me, that's a really important thing. When I actually started in the Australian Arm Wrestling Federation, they have a fantastic website that keeps all of your stats, wins, losses, how many starts, right, everything. And one of my biggest objectives was to have more official ready goes than anybody else in the country. And I've done that for the last 4 years consecutively. So, which has now taken me to having more official starts than anybody else in the country. And as a result of that, I've really, I think, benefited tremendously. My win ratio is only about 60%, I believe, but probably about 65 on right and about 60% on left. But my ranking and my ability on who I can now beat has really gone up a lot. So I'm like I said, multiple national champion for the 80 kilo class. I've won the Asia Pacific Championship on the right arm as well. And it's now time for me to even go up a weight category. I'll be competing in the 90 kilo category from here on in and trying to aim at that, guys. But the whole point of this is, again, tying into the philosophy, okay, of not fearing losing. That was one thing that I did when I was in my tennis days, was I really did fear losing. And that was something that really held me back a lot in terms of my ability to progress. So now that I don't fear losing, it's fine. I sit there every time I lose to someone who's I'm unable to beat yet because of challenge and whatever. To me, it's an opportunity to log their biomechanics, to take a sample of their biomechanics and go, okay, I know what you're doing now. I know where your weakness is. Okay, it's not about going back and getting stronger in my move. I don't like to do that. If I lose to someone, it's not about saying, all right, go and make my top roll better, or my hook better, or my press better, whatever. It's all right. I felt their gap. I don't care where their gap is, whether it's inside, outside, whatever. Okay, high, low, dragging, pressing, driving forward, whatever gap I felt in their game, that's when I'm going to train. I'm going to train to exploit that gap because I think that's their weakness, because most people are going to just hit their strength. Okay, and so whilst they're comfortable like that, you get the opportunity to exploit them and you get to climb that ladder, go past them, and it's a bloody fantastic feeling when you do it. So I think on the overalls list I'm about 7th or 8th in the country at the moment, including, that's for all weights. As we sit right here right now, I'm about 90 kilos, so I am getting heavier at the moment, and it's something that I'm really looking forward to doing in terms of the domestic goals that I've got within Australia to really climb that overalls list. Internationally, I missed out on the World Arm Wrestling League qualifications for Oceania for the 165 pound class because my training partner at the time, Jordan Davis, took me out in the semi-finals. The way the draw went, only one of us could get through, and he's an arm wrestler who has the exact same philosophies. We've developed them together, and yeah, look, he beat me in that. So I've missed out on the international 165 pound class, but I'll be going up to the 195 pound class from here on in anyway. So should be good. But so yeah, guys, I guess to wrap up this whole philosophy video, what I wanted to talk about was my training philosophy, and it is something that people do ask me a lot, and I haven't been able to give them the thorough answer before. But so hopefully you guys have seen something in this video. And my philosophy really hinges on a couple of key factors, and those key factors to me are understanding the biomechanics, understanding that strength, yes, is needed, but when you understand the biomechanics truly, when you analyze why someone is able to win, okay, assuming that people are the exact same strength level, why is one person winning and the other person not? It's because one person is denying access to biomechanical power of the other person. So when you start to become aware of that and observe that, it allows you to identify little movements, and it allows you to become strong in those little movements. Okay, and when you do that, you start to really get strong in the right things, and it makes a huge difference overall. The other philosophy that has been something that has underpinned my progress is, okay, not fearing losing. Obviously, not fearing losing was, as I said, it was a huge thing for me when I was trying to pursue tennis, and it's something that has totally changed. Once you can let go of that, it's all good. But anyway, ladies and gents, thanks for tuning in. I know it was a good long video tonight, so hopefully, if you were at all in this, it's been helpful to you. You now understand a little bit more about who I am and why I train the way I do with high reps and the biomechanical stuff, lots of table time, and less on the heavy strength stuff. Yeah, hopefully it all makes a bit more sense now. Anyway, guys, take it easy. I'll see you again next time.